How do you add new words to your vocabulary in a way that actually helps you remember them and actually helps you utilize them in real life conversations? Now, keeping that in mind, this is not a video about how to learn fancy words. That's not what, according to me, vocabulary expansion is really useful for. It's about upgrading our lexicon so that we're able to express ourselves a little more effectively. And in our communications trainings, this is one of the core questions that we get asked: how to approach vocabulary expansion in a way that you can learn the right words, actually remember them, and also use them in conversations. And to break this down in this video, I'm going to discuss the vocabulary expansion myth that is preventing you from using better words, what the sustainable expansion method is and why it is the correct way to add new words to your vocabulary, and a process to help you remember new words effortlessly. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Rideep from Frantically Speaking. We release communications content very regularly, so if you're into this, hit subscribe. And if you want to take your communications learning to the next level, you can click the link in the description to check out our courses and see if we can work together. Let's get into it. The very first thing we have to address when it comes to expanding your vocabulary is we need to eliminate the incorrect way of doing it, which is why we're going to be addressing the vocabulary expansion myth. Now, what is this myth exactly? After training thousands of professionals in developing their communication skills, whenever we ask somebody, how do you approach vocabulary expansion? Let's say if you could not hire a coach, you could not hire anybody, how would you go about doing it yourself? And the instinctual response is generally one of these things. It's either reading, watching English movies or TV shows, considering we're trying to expand our vocabulary within English, noting down new words that you might hear from somebody else, looking up dictionaries every other day or every day, and using different applications that claim to help expand your vocabulary. These are the common suspects. There might be a few more to this list which you have tried. But there's a problem with all of these methods. And the major problem is that when we start to learn new words, if you have followed any one of these particular methods, ask yourself, however long back you did it, can you recall about even 5 of those particular words? If not, then there's a problem. And the problem is that we cannot remember those words, and hence using them becomes a far off dream. So not only have we wasted our time, but we've not really taken out anything out of this activity. Instead, we need to understand why this approach does not work. The main thing to keep in mind is when we are reading a book or we're watching a show or we hear somebody use a word we don't know, what do? We would either go to a dictionary or we would Google that particular word or ask ChatGPT, whatever. We would look it up in some way or the other. That is the worst thing we can do. And I know that if you've ever tried learning a new word, you've generally gone to Google or something similar to try and look up the meaning. When you do this, there are 2 problems with it. Number 1, you're spoon feeding your brain. Think of it like this. Imagine a child goes for an exam in school and they copy all the answers and they come back. Now they've passed the exam, but they've not really retained any of the information. Googling different words is pretty similar to that itself. Because when you realize you don't know a word and then you Google it, you're essentially telling your mind, oh brain, you don't know this information? Here it is, right away, with no effort whatsoever. And when we spoon feed our brain like that, it values that information very little. And hence the chances of us remembering it or forget applying it is very, very low. Which is why most of us fail in our efforts to expand our vocabulary. And the second biggest problem with this addresses the biggest myth of vocabulary expansion. According to us, what is vocabulary expansion? Just answer this question in your mind. Most likely you would have thought that vocabulary expansion means learning new words and utilizing them in conversations or whatever. But that's not really what it is. Because having a goal of trying to learn every word out there is very unrealistic. If I were to snap my fingers today and you can memorize 2,000 words, not just memorize, let's say you comprehend it. There's no way you can forget about them and you can utilize them in conversations. Yet, there's going to be a chance that the next day someone uses a word that is beyond those 2,000 new words. So expanding our vocabulary in terms of learning new words is an impossible task. Instead, we want to follow a different method, which is known as sustainable vocabulary expansion. And this is the basis of the entire training. The biggest mantra we have to keep in our mind over here is we have to learn from context, not spoon feeding. What this means is whenever you come across a word you don't know, instead of Googling it or looking it up on a dictionary, you want to get a sentence on that particular word. Once you get a particular sentence, you want to then try and deduce the meaning of that word basis the context the sentence has provided. Let's go through a quick example. Let's say if you're trying to learn a word called adept. Nice word, you can utilize it in daily conversations. And it's something that a lot of us confuse with the word adapt or adopt. This is not that. Now, how do we learn the meaning of this? The best way to do it is to get a sentence. Let's say this is your sentence. After working in IT for more than a decade, Sanjay has become an adept developer. Now, when it comes to this particular statement, ask yourself, what can adept mean based on the context the sentence has provided? The more we read it and reread it and keep asking ourselves this very question, the easier it becomes to deduce its meaning. A good hack to keep in mind is whatever meaning you might have thought about, can you replace that meaning with the word adept? And does the sentence still make sense? If it does, then you're more likely to be on the right track. In this case, when we're thinking of the word developer, we're thinking of IT, someone working for a long time, it means they have built a skill set, and hence adept means skillful. And if you try replacing adept with the word skillful in the sentence, it still makes sense. Sanjay has become a skillful developer. And we have to apply this particular principle over and over again. Now, how can you do this yourself? There are two methods. One is if you're part of our live training, then of course, we will be sending you words and sentences and jamming with you to ensure that you're getting the right meaning. But even if you aren't part of the training, there's a way you can do it. That's where we let ChatGPT come in. Now, the way we're going to utilize ChatGPT is a little different. I'm going to show you the entire process. So here's how it would go. You open ChatGPT and put across the word that you want to learn, or you can ask ChatGPT to tell you words that you should know in your industry but probably don't. So let's say you go to ChatGPT, just pick a word that you might not have the meaning to. For example, over here we are picking a word called innocuous. Once you have the word down, ask ChatGPT to give you 3 sentences using this particular word. Once you have that, read these 3 sentences again and again so that you can try and deduce the meaning of the word basis the context provided. If you still can't understand it, ask it for more sentences so that you get a clearer understanding. Once you have somewhat of an idea, ask ChatGPT whether your answer is correct or incorrect. Make sure to add a statement that says, don't give me the right answer, just tell me whether I'm correct or incorrect. Now, if you have the right answer, awesome. Move on to the next word and repeat the same process. If not, ask for more sentences until you get this word right. If you're finding this word too hard, put it on the back seat and try with a different word. But whatever happens, do not Google the meaning of this word. The main thing we learned so far is how do you learn through context instead of just looking up words. But what about the words you do learn? These 10 words that you just did, you did find out the meaning through deduction, through context instead of spoon feeding. How do you ensure you remember them for the long term? The first step was taken care of, that we did not Google it. We put our mind to understanding it. That will anyways help us sustain the memory of that word. But there are other things that we can do to ensure we're not just remembering it, but utilizing the words within conversation. This is a 4-step process. The very first step involves note. This means we note down the words that we just learned. We want to limit this to just 1 word per day. The way we can do it is after we find out the meaning of the word, we want to simply open our notes application on our phone or any area that's accessible and just make a note of that word over there. We can also write it down on a piece of paper and put it near our work or study area. That's number 1. You have the word and the meaning next to it. Second step is sleep. I know this sounds weird, but just hear me out. Before you turn in for the day, just look at the word that you learned along with the meaning, read it a couple of times, and go to sleep. Research shows that when we read or learn something right before sleeping, there's a much higher chance of us remembering it for the long term. So that's step number 2. And now comes step number 3, which is the most important. Here you want to utilize. Utilize the word that you learned once in any conversation immediately the next day. When I say immediately, I mean anytime in the next day itself. Now, this can happen in a conversation. The best way to approach it from a conversation perspective is don't try to go into a meeting and utilize a word you just learned. Instead, use it with people you're comfortable with. Try it with your family, friends, people who won't judge you even if you incorrectly use that word. Once you do, you'll get more comfortable using it in an actual situation. Another great way to apply it is in your emails. Remember earlier I mentioned have a list at your study or a work area? When you're writing an email, ask yourself, hey, can I sprinkle this word into my email? And the more you do that, you can do it in both, or you can just do it in one of these two settings, either in email or conversation. But when you do that the next day, you will get the feeling of utilization. On that same day, I want you to repeat the same process with a new word, just a single new word. Go on ChatGPT, do the whole process again. Take a note of that word in the same list where you put the first word. So you will have two words along with its meaning. Before sleeping, read both the words and the meaning, go off to sleep. The next day, just utilize the second word itself. Even if you follow this process for 21 days, which is the ideal recommendation, you'll learn a good amount of words, you'll get used to the context, muscle building, and finally, you would have used a bunch of new vocabulary in 3 weeks' time. This is the best approach towards remembering words that you learn. Try it out starting today and let us know how it goes. Now, if you also want to understand the vocabulary iceberg to know what are the right words to learn and how do you find them, you can check out that whole video right here.